Welcome back to Rogue Performance, and today we're upgrading the cooling on this turbo Subaru Impreza by fitting a Mishimoto Aluminium Radiator to replace the tired factory unit, which as you can see has already started leaking on the plastic end tanks. Cooling is absolutely critical on these flat 4 engines, and the upgrade is about reliability and longevity and real world performance. In this video we'll take you through the full install, show you the differences between the OEM radiator and the Mishimoto Alloy upgrade, and get this Impreza back to running cool and dependable the way it should be. So let's get into getting it fitted and showing you what it's all about. So your first stage is removing the under tray. It's the first thing you need to do to gain access to all the underneath of the radiator. There's a series of clips, which this one is extremely tight. There we go. So you have a series of these clips, which are generally on both sides there, and then you have some 12 mils front and rear. The bolts at the front have been changed, so we are on 12 mils at the front, but at the back they've been changed to 14s or possibly 13s. Yeah, 13s. All the Subaru stuff is generally 12 mil or 14, and these are 13s. So we've now got the under tray off, and there's a few things on the bottom that needs uncoupling. So I'm going to bring a camera underneath so you can see what we do. So the wiring needs uncoupling on both sides for the fans. So the other one is above the radiator hose. It's easiest just to get a pick to push the button in, which allows you to then release the wiring. They can be fiddly and seized, but it will generally come out. You just need to push them in a little bit, then release the tab, and then they will come out. So we've now got both of those done. And then to try and show you on this side, so if you look here, there's a tap. So what we do is we put a pipe on that hose, undo that tap, and it allows the radiator to drain out. As you can see, you put the pipe on, and then it's just a case of opening the tap, which can be a little bit awkward if it's tight to get your fingers in and actually turn it, but it may. It's very tight on this one, so what I'm going to do is get some pliers in, which will just allow me to move it a little bit, or it should do, just to get it moving. There we go, hear the crack, and then hopefully I can get it with my fingers. Part of it is the camera is in the way, so I'm just going to lean it to the left a little bit. And I really am struggling to undo this now. Once it's out, it's on like a rubber O-ring. I've had these tight before, but not generally this tight. I may just really struggle. Try and use 2 hands. There we go. 2 hands, and I'm managing to open it slightly. So what I'm going to do is pull the camera out, lower this down. So what I'm going to do now is open the tap a bit further. You can take the peg or the blank all the way out, but then water will run everywhere. If you just slacken it off, then the water is only allowed out of the tube at the front. So we should be able to drain everything into the bucket without making too much of a mess. I have got big shovel hands, so it is difficult to get in here. It's tight on the rubber. I'm literally having to pull up with one finger on one hand and push down on the other because it's too tight to do with one hand at the minute. I could do with a smaller hand. I would think now that that is out far enough. We just need to take the cap off. So there's two caps on these. Cap off the radiator and also take the cap off the header tank. And now it's all starting to drain into the bucket. So I've had to wait about 25 minutes for all this to drain out, but I were doing other jobs at the time, so I just left it to drain. Just makes it a bit of a cleaner and easier job. Now we've drained the majority out of the bucket, we need to go to the bottom radiator hose on the other side, release that off and catch what we can in the bucket and hope not a lot goes on the floor. So up here, just trying to show you, there we go, the bottom hose we need to take off, the clamp is all rusty and seized, so I'm going to have to cut that off. So I'm just going to put you in a position where you can see what I'm doing. So I've got some fairly strong cutters and I need to try and get in to cut this off. It's difficult because the subframe's in the way, but I should be able to get in on this side. So that's one side broke. See if I can get the same on the other side. I'm just going to try and pull one side of the clamp out the way, and then hopefully I can get on the other side. There we go. So the clamp is now off in a couple of pieces. Just need to try and get both sides of it off, and then we can pull the hose off. So we want to try and not get water everywhere. So I'm going to hold the bucket under and drain what we can. Well, that's the bottom hose off and everything draining out. You can see the tray that I recently bought for doing this kind of thing worked a treat. Everything that fell to the floor missed. I need a bigger tray. So there's a few things you have to do. You have to make sure that the wiring is disconnected on both sides for the fans, and obviously make sure the bottom hose is disconnected and that you've drained all the coolant. We can now lower the vehicle down and then move to the top to start disconnecting things and pulling the radiator out from the top. So we're now at a position where we need to take the radiator out. So the first thing we're going to do is remove the bottle, which you just push in the little plastic tab with your finger, and that allows you to slide the bottle out and up. Just to give you a view on that tab, it's that tab there that's inside. You just push it back and it allows it to come off that peg. And we're then in a position where we're taking the top hose off. We are replacing the hoses with Mishimoto ones to match the radiator. Should now be able to get that off. I'd have been better with a power ratchet, but I'm trying to keep noise down off the power tools for while we're filming. There we go. That's the top hose off. That has snapped, which can happen, does happen quite a lot on these. So we're going to have to drill that out and tap it. And this side has come out nicely. Once we've got those out, we then need to take 10 mils out to lift the fan housings out. The fans come out in 2 pieces, so 2 sides. Now Mishimoto do a slimline fan pack, which you can put in with these radiators, which gives you a little bit more room. The actual normal fans will fit with the new radiator, but it's a tight squeeze. Now I've got everything loose. Just one more 10 mil. We fitted quite a few of these radiators and we don't tend to have any fitment issues. So all the bolt holes will line up in general, and we don't have any issues in that respect. Just try and tuck that back out of the way. So that's why you need to disconnect your fans at the bottom. If you don't, it's a lot more of a struggle from the top. And that is both fans out. And then it's just a case of lifting the old rad out. So we're just going to get, there's some leaves, bits of paper, get all them out. Now we do need to drill that bolt out, and it's right above the air condenser. What I don't want to do is drill into the air condenser. I'm hoping the bolt's going to come out okay, I think, because what I didn't want to do is then snap the condenser bolts if they were in the same condition. Now the only thing is, it has got some bolts at the front that's holding it, so I can't really do much to move that. I think what I am going to do, this will fit underneath, I can fit that in to protect it. There we go. So I've got a block of aluminium underneath so that when I drill this, it's protected. So it's, I believe it's an 8 mil. Yeah, so the 6.5 goes in. So what I'm going to try and do, these are Cobalt drills, so they're pretty decent drills. Try and keep metal bits in the bay as little as possible. So that has now centralised. You don't want metal fragments in the engine bay if you can help it. I believe that may be through. Not quite. I forgot to silence the phone again. There we go. Silence the phone. There we go. Go through. That protected us from damaging anything, and actually managed to get the thread out pretty much. I'm hoping that we can get a bolt in again. I'll probably have to run a tap down it, but we're now all good for that. So we've done the drilling and sorted that out. Didn't actually need to take these out, so I'll put these back in. The customer has also asked me if I can replace the auxiliary belts while I'm in here, because they're not in the best condition. So we're going to do that as well. I'll drop that out of the way for now. So what we need on here, drop this clip out, but it makes it easier to then put that out of the way. So we need to slacken that 12 and reverse that 12 up, which will slacken one belt off, and slacken that 12 under there, and then reverse that one up and slacken that one off, and then that'll allow the alternator to drop and we can get both belts off and replace both of them. So slacken that off, and same way that, and that. Once you've slackened those off, I'm going to use the buzz gun on this one because it just speeds up what we're doing. So that allows you to wind the alternator down. And then on this one, the pulley up. And then remove both belts. So we've got a 5 PK 882 and 4 PK 898. That's what's coming off. With the extra thickness of the radiator, it is just easier to use these. Now, belts we've got in stock is a Gates one and a Conti. I don't like mixing brands normally, but on this one, it's just what was available, and we couldn't get a matching pair of belts. So again, so the aircon belt is on the first side, and the alternator and power steering is the front one. Just have to be careful when putting the belts on and make sure that they are settled in the grooves. So just the reverse to tighten that up, and the same on this side. So tension wise, they both want a little bit more. So on the longest side, which is this one, you should be able to turn the belt 90 degrees and it spring back nicely. Same on this one, which they're both spot on now. So you can see changing these belts is not a big job. And then you need to nip back up the bolts that hold the tensioners in place. So there's a nut on that one. Again, a nut on that one. And then just grab the extension. And that bracket needs to sit against, that peg needs to sit against the metal. So it's upright so that the top cover fits nicely. There we go. So that is both the belts changed. So we are now ready to put the rad in. I'm just going to hook that up out of the way. So on the bottom of the radiator, you got some locating pegs. And you want to go in carefully because you don't want to damage any of the fins. And at the bottom, those locating pegs sit in a little rubber bush. And then once they're in, you can put the two top brackets back on. I am going to get some stainless bolts. So as one of them snapped and we're having to replace it, then I am using some stainless fixings that we have for replacing these. They are 13 mils, just like the ones we took out. Obviously the originals would be a 12. And then this one should go in. We may need to run a tap down it. Now we're all tightening up nicely. There we go. So that is the new radiator secured in place. We now have to fit the fans back in. Again, there is less room here than what there was previously, for obvious reasons. The fans have locating pegs again. So I'm just feeling with my hand. The power steering pipe does get in the way a little bit, but you can just hold it out of the way while you line everything up. And obviously there's a plastic peg on the bottom of each fan, one on the left, one on the right, and they locate into the bottom. And then you can use your top tabs here. If you look at where these are located, that helps you to locate the fan as well. And then it's just a case of getting the right hand fan in. Again, you just need to be able to line them up and make sure that the pegs sit in nicely. It can be a fiddle to get them in. It can be easier at times if you lift the vehicle up to locate it, but I'm just going to try and do it by feel. I can feel the peg and I can feel the hole. You just can't move very much when you're in there. I am struggling right now. I'm just going to grab a torch to see if I can get a little bit more view on the bottom. Don't normally have this trouble finding the hole. And again, I can't get my fat hands in. So what I am going to do is lift the car up so that I can locate them from the bottom. Just have to move the cameras out of the way. So the holes are just slightly off on this one, which is why I was struggling. But I have now moved them in. You can then plug the fans back in on both sides while it's up. And now I can bolt everything back up at the top. So once we have the fans in the bottom holes, you can then start putting the bolts back in the top. Now the threads are different, so you don't use the original bolts. Mishimoto supply you a set of new ones. So we have a new set of bolts. There's a few blanking bolts and caps depending what you fit in. Some don't need certain things. So on this we're now using a selection of new nuts and bolts, one of which I've just dropped. Luckily I can see it and grab it with a magnet. So these look to be a 4mm hex. So we are a 4mm hex to fit these on. And you just have to make sure that you get this back in position. So in this second hole it has the metal pipe as well. And then same again on this one. And then the same on the last fan mount. I'm feeling this bolt might be too long. I could be proved wrong, but it's only holding the bracket and I don't think it will tighten up before hitting the end. I could be wrong, and I am. That's tightened up nicely. But I bet there's about a mil clearance, if that. So as you can see, it's not a major job changing this kit, and you do get some clearance. I will try, once I just tighten this last bolt, that hose needs to go on there, which you do have to bend that up a little bit, otherwise the hose won't reach. But nothing too mad. So all those are now tight, and I'm just going to empty the coolant out of the bottle because obviously we're putting all fresh coolant in. This is a tighter squeeze than with the standard radiator, but again you blindly have to line the hole up at the bottom, which may be easier with a torch. And once you've lined that up and got it in at the bottom, you then, I mean, it is a very tight fit because the radiator is a bit deeper, so the issue you have is you don't get much clearance between the timing belt covers. But that is pretty much built back up now. Got that hose to put on, which just need the pliers to put the clamp on there. Now it's time for the radiator hose kit. So it comes in a bag from Mishimoto. They do make very good quality hoses. So as you can see, a top radiator hose and a bottom radiator hose, and you do get a bag of new clips. which is good. As you know, we had one of the bottom clips we had to cut off, so it's great that it's come with a new set. Now one of these ends is normally slightly longer than the other, although this looks the same. We'll look against the old one. It is the same. Now I have fitted Mishimoto hoses before, but never with the upgrade radiator. So I just need to check. One of the things you have to be very wary of is your clearance. I have known these be cut through by the pulley on the alternator. Because the radiator sits ever so slightly further back, being slightly thicker. So as you can see on here, it's touching the fan blades. But let's get it all the way on. So I'm happy with the clearance on this pulley. You can more or less get your finger between it. There's plenty of clearance there. And the fans, I can try and turn the fan. You can see the fan blade isn't going to touch, but it is close, and with a bit of movement it may do. So what I'm actually going to do is trim the hose, because the last thing we want is it getting cut and a leak. So what we need to do is just trim off the very end of the hose. Now luckily, Jan, my favourite snap-on man, was here, so he's allowed me, because you need a long knife like this to be able to cut a neat end off, otherwise you end up with a very horrible cut. That is now a nice neat cut. I'm fairly sure that that will now be the right length. If you're fitting these hoses with a standard radiator, then you can just put them straight on. But if you're fitting them with Mishimoto's own radiator that's a bit fatter, then you will need to trim them slightly. Because if you don't, you do risk it catching on the fan, which is no good for anybody. Sometimes you have to do both, but this has cleared enough from there, I believe. Although I am going to take a little bit off that at this end as well, purely and simply because I'm responsible if this decides it's going to split because it's caught on something. So again, you're just taking about 4mm off. And that 4mm just gives you the additional clearance that you need. You now have a hand clearance there and the same on there, so you're not going to have any risk of anything catching. And then obviously Mishimoto supply you with the new hose clamps. So you can nip those up. And then same on this end. You want to get your hand in and hold the clamp in position, because obviously when you're trying to turn it, otherwise it'll all move. And then once you get it semi-tight, you can turn that in. and that is tight on both ends, and there's plenty of clearance. So what we need to do now is change the bottom hose. So I'll lift it up and reset the cameras. We'll show you changing the bottom hose, and then we can start bleeding the whole system up and refilling the coolant. So we have the hose clamp again, which is one of the standard Subaru ones. This one is not seized, so it is allowing me to wind it off. What I'm going to try and do is get you in a position where you can actually see fully what I'm doing. A little bit of a better view. So that clamp is now fully off. I'm just going to move you back a slight bit because we may lose a bit of coolant out of here when I take this off. There we go. So we haven't lost any coolant, but again, I have a feeling on this particular hose we're going to have to shorten the hose slightly. We may not, but I'm just going to do a quick check. Yeah, we are going to have to shorten the hose, which isn't an issue. We've just done that a few times. Now I've left the blade at the top. So what I am going to do is get one of the new blades out and use that by hand. So again, the radiator is back by about that much. So it's just a case of keeping a nice straight cut. If you don't cut this off, you will end up with a kink in the hose, which can restrict flow, and it can make it so that the hose itself over time splits. So we end up with not a perfect cut, but a straight and neatish cut. And to show you from this side, I need to clean off the metal or aluminium hose because it's got on it some bits of corrosion and furring up of the alley. Just covering the camera in bits. I'm just going to move it back a little bit to try not to. So the cloth's cleaning it but not perfectly, so what I'm going to do is just get a piece of red scotch, and the red scotch should clean it up. So if you don't clean these up, you will end up with a leak. The top one where I fitted the top hose onto the body were nice and clean, so there was no need to do any cleaning on that at all. But this one has some layers of corrosion and it's rough and not a smooth surface, so it will leak. Now I'm just going to use this because I can see a little bit that needs scraping off, that the red scotch weren't touching. Just need something with a sharp edge. The last thing we want is a leak. So that is now nicely cleaned up. I'll just try and move you in to give you a better view. So you can see the end of that is now relatively clean. It was all furry before. So when you're putting this on, you need to make sure that you put it on in a position where you can get to the hose clamps to tighten them up, because it is awkward. So I've taken about 5mm off the end of that hose, which allows me to get it in without a kink, or it should do. There we go. That now fits nicely without a kink. I'll tell you what I have done. I've left the tool up top for tightening that up. So we shall get a screwdriver and tighten it up with the flathead. So that one is nice and tight, and what I'm going to try and do is move that so we've got light but it's not in my view or the camera's view, and then tighten the bottom clamp up as well. A little bit awkward because there's various things in the way, but once you get it so it's starting to nip, then it won't move when you're tightening, so you're all right. And then it's a case of filling the coolant, bleeding the system, and getting it finished. So that is now nice and tight. One good nip for good luck. You don't want to go too tight because the hose clamps can cut into the hoses. So we've got the Mishimoto hose on. It's not kinked anywhere. It fits perfect because we've trimmed off the 4 or 5mm. We've got the hose clamps in. We've now got, if I can just get the light in to show you, it's just underneath there so I can see the wiring's back in for the fan on that side. And the wiring is also back in for the fan on that side. We've got all 4 the location pegs in for the fans. It's now time to get it all bled up. So Mishimoto do supply you with a new cap for the header tank, and the radiator obviously comes with its own new cap. We're going to remove that because we need to top the radiator up itself. So on these, the way you bleed them is you fill the radiator up until it's full. You fill it up through the top till it's full, and then you put the cap on the radiator, and then you use the no-spill funnel to bleed up the system. We're on red coolant prior to this job, so obviously we're going to use red coolant again. So we have some Miller's red coolant here that's ready mixed. So we're going to start by filling the radiator. And hope we don't get any leaks. So as you're filling this, try not to spill any. Keeping a job clean when you're working with coolant benefits you, because when you're running it up to temperature to bleed the system up, you don't end up with a lot of it burning off on the engine with a lot of steam, if you can keep the job as clean as possible without spillage. So that's one. So these systems take about 8 litres, 8.5 litres, and you fill them up from both sides. I'll just pour some in there to allow that to start flowing through. This radiator is now starting to get full. Again, it's 8.5 litres with a standard radiator. This one is a little bit bigger, so it may hold a little bit more. And obviously as I'm pouring it into the top of this radiator, it will be flowing down the top pipe into the engine as well. Trying to be very careful not to spill anything. There we go. that is full. One thing I have noticed is they've changed the design of the cap that comes on the radiator to a slightly smaller cap. Fluid's going in, air's coming out, which is always good. They can air lock sometimes, these Subarus. I've never had an issue with it, but if you use a no-spill funnel, you tend not to have an issue with it. So that's probably why, because I've always had the no-spill funnels to use. I'm just cleaning up and removing the bits we don't need. Now, I'm just checking on the basis of, as we have fitted a few of these radiators in the past, I've never needed the blanking plug. The blanking plug is for if you haven't got the pipe. On some of the earlier models, without this extra cap, you don't have the pipe coming off there, so you fit the blank. I'm just having a quick look round and making sure they haven't put anywhere else that needs a blank that I'm not aware of, which I don't believe they have. And I'm just going to put the cover back on over the belts because everything's tight now. And then this is the last job before I start it up. And we do the bleeding process. Obviously, once we start this up, there'll be a lot of noise. So you'll probably not be able to hear me if I'm saying anything on the mic. Although these mics are quite good, and they do blank out a lot of the background and pick up what you're wanting it to hear. So that's something I can test as well. That is now on, everything's on. So I'm going to open the small door and then we can start her up. So you can see in the funnel the air bubbles coming out. We'll probably find that this will drop its level slightly, because as the air comes out of the engine as it's bleeding, like that, obviously the fluid goes in, the level will drop and we may need to top up. Just having a good look round, making sure there's no leaks, making sure everything's clear. And we also need to top up the coolant tank, because the overflow does need to be about halfway. Go. That's the overflow set to where it needs to be, and what we need to do now, we're basically waiting for the engine to get up to temperature. Sometimes I will, in this cold weather especially, I'll sit with my mop handle, put the revs on 2,500 revs, 3,000 revs once it's got warm. So we can heat it up quicker, because we need to make sure the fans kick in and everything works as it should on the cooling side, because you don't want it overheating just after you've done an upgrade of a radiator. So that is what we were waiting for. You can see the fan is now running. So the next step is to close off the system. Now the next step is to close off the system with that stopper for the funnel. Take out your bits and bobs and put on the cap. And that is job finished. One radiator upgrade to replace a tired leaking one. Another job finished. Hope this has helped some people. If you're looking to replace your radiator, this may give you a little bit of help on doing so. So the last thing we need to do is put the cover back under. It hooks on to the front lower radiator support bar. Couldn't think what to call it then. Obviously, we need to get these front bolts back in and located as well. And then there's the two plastic clips that just go into the subframe, one at each side. And that is job done. If you found this video helpful, make sure you hit the like button. It really helps the channel out. If you're into Subaru builds, real world upgrades and honest workshop content, don't forget to subscribe to Rogue Performance and turn on the notifications so you don't miss the next one. Link in the description to the radiator and the hose kit. We will do a 10% discount for anybody wanting to purchase them. Drop any questions, any comments below, and we'll see you in the next one.